So there were two TED Talks that I got to watch this week. The first one was by Ted Wojak, which was about the Marshmallow Challenge, building a tower, building a team. And the second one was by Margaret Heffernan called Dare to Disagree. In the first TED Talk by Wojak, I've actually got to do this Marshmallow Challenge before, and it was really interesting to get to hear him talk about just the background behind it, as well as like his experience of what he's seen. For me, I found it so funny when he was talking about the way that kindergartners are often the ones that do really good at this challenge, and how they work together compared to often the rest of us, which was exactly my experience the first time that I ever did the Marshmallow Challenge. We all sat down, immediately we're looking for the one solution. We weren't really kind of talking, we were just kind of trying to come up with something really quick. And then we got to the end of it, and there was really nothing to do, no time to do anything after the marshmallow did not sit on our structure, was not able to be stable, it just fell over. The second time that I did do the Marshmallow Challenge, I did remember some of the stuff from the first time, that there was something about a triangle, and we needed that for the structure, so it was more successful on the second round. But it was really interesting to hear him just talk about the hidden assumptions that we do have. And the big kind of advantage of kindergartners and kind of a lot of other successful people that do this challenge for the first time is just their ability to slow everything down. They're not looking for that one solution. They're kind of taking the time and collaborating with their team, just trying some different prototypes, trying some different ideas, rather than kind of rushing for that one solution that we often, kind of the rest of us that aren't so successful, look for. So he kind of really points out the value of kind of teamwork and getting rid of those hidden assumptions that we have. Having that shared experience when we are building that structure, kind of taking in feedback from different people, being able to design different prototypes, and ultimately that leads to more success because you do kind of have that time and that chance to see if your structure is going to be able to hold that marshmallow. In the second video or TED Talk by Heffernan, Dare to Disagree, this TED Talk was really interesting for me. I found it very powerful. She talked about two things. The first one being just around conflict and reframing it in a way that seeing conflict more as a really kind of powerful asset and really essential to our thinking process, our ability to make decisions, and putting it in kind of more so of a positive light compared to how we often kind of see it as a really negative thing. As well, she talked about openness and how, openness is a really, great thing. It's great to have information, but the reality is that openness alone isn't enough to fuel that change, and that we do need to be able to kind of put that conflict in there too, and be able to challenge those things and have those discussions. With openness, she talked about the finding around X-rays and pregnancies and how it took 25 years before any change was made. So that really kind of shows you that openness, it's great, but it doesn't really prompt any type of immediate change. And you think about those 25 years, the difference that information could have had. Another statistic that she mentioned was around 85% of people in the workplace really kind of stay in the silence. They're not engaging in conflict, not being able to voice it. So again, we have that really high statistic, and it's interesting because it's high and it almost shocks you to hear that. But I really kind of believe that when I think about my own workplace and how often, with my coworkers and I, sometimes it's behind, our kind of office doors, not really in a group type setting that we're having those discussions. And it's interesting that we kind of back away from conflict rather than see it as a thing that's okay to engage in. For me, kind of with this course, it kind of goes back to the conversation or the TED Talk with Heffernan, seeing conflict in a different way. Starting to really see that it's really kind of essential and necessary, and I notice myself, in meetings that I've had lately, just thinking a lot more critically and thinking about how to kind of frame things or discuss things or bring up certain points. Because when I think about people, that I know that I've seen kind of more so in a workplace or even personally, that are really good at asking those critical questions. Those are the people that are engaging in conflict. They're bringing up those points, and often when they do, especially when I kind of think about like a team meeting, when they do bring up those things, you see a lot of other nods around the table and people agreeing as well. So it's interesting that that kind of shows you that so many of us maybe are agreeing or thinking the same thing, but we don't say it. Once that one person starts to make kind of that one person starts to make, a discussion around their perspective, often you see a lot of other people jump in. And it really starts to shift the way that we go about, collaborating and thinking about, the process itself, but also the ultimate decision. So I do think that it's really valuable for us to start to see conflict as really necessary and, a very healthy thing, which is also something that Margaret Heffernan discussed around having thinking societies, that in order for us, to grow and be educated, we do need to have conflict, and teaching, adults that, but also teaching children that if we can, make them understand that conflict is okay and it's healthy and it's to be expected, then it will become, more embedded in kind of the way that our society is, which is actually a really positive thing. Another thing for me, just around conflict that stood out kind of throughout this course was going back to just communication and different ways that we can be effective in our communication. Being able to time things kind of correctly, looking for certain signs, being sensitive to people as well as the situation. Because again, when I think about those people that are really successful, they ask really good questions, but they also have a certain way of communicating that's very professional, very sensitive to the people that they're addressing, which is often very different types of people. And so I think that goes back just to having certain types of communication skills. And the last thing that I think about in terms of this course in collaboration and conflict, for me, what was really interesting was reading the chapters by Brown just around groups and how often, groups are very susceptible to things that I didn't even actually know about. And so after reading that, it really kind of stood out to me to think a little bit differently, when I'm in a group setting and what I'm noticing. Because it is interesting to kind of find that there's, we can get into certain types of traps, so you can become kind of polarized in a certain way, and to be, educated and aware of that when I am in a group. And I also think it's something that moving forward is really kind of important to address with groups too, the types of things that we can see happen. Because it's valuable to be in a group setting for sure when we have so many different perspectives and people that, can bring a lot of different type of diversity to a group. But there's also some negatives that can come from that. So just kind of being aware about what are some of the things that we kind of run into when we're in a group. And as well, I think that having something at the very beginning just around the idea of this is what conflict is and this is why it's okay, and this is how we can present it too. I think if you have examples of how to kind of present and communicate conflict, you can do so in a way that's really healthy and really valuable to the group.